Do you see that beautiful wood that I found, people? Look at that. Just wanted to bring us out to the pond for a moment. Andrea and I, we really do like it. Look at these little flowers. And they're still trying to hang in there. Do you see them? Who has flowers in December? Seriously. You can see how frosty it is out here. It's pretty frosty. Look at that beautiful wood. How frosty everything is. It's cold out here. Okay, people. Just stay in the course here. December 11th, 2017. Not too many days left. January 7th is Ukrainian Christmas, by the way. I am Ukrainian, right? So, anyway, just wanted to make a mental note of that. And it is the 11th, so the clock is ticking. So, I'm in my little workspace here. And the first thing I want to point out is I have no help. I have no paralegals helping me, no staff of any kind, right? I have no student lawyers working with me, helping me. I have nothing, people. I have absolutely nothing. All I have is memories of a family that's been basically decimated. That's what I have. And I have the Criminal Code of Canada, which under section 215(1), duties of person to provide necessities. Everyone is under a legal duty. I checked off C. To provide necessities of life to a person under his charge if that person, 1, is unable by reason of detention, age, illness, mental disorder, or other cause to withdraw himself from that charge, and, or 2, is unable to provide himself with the necessities of life. And then 2, under 215 of the Criminal Code of Canada, the offense, everyone commits an offense who, if the camera kicks out, it's only because I can't see, I'm reading, right? Everyone commits an offense who, being under a legal duty within the means of subsection 1, fails without lawful excuse, the proof of which lies on him to perform the duty, that if, and then I did B, with respect to duty imposed by paragraph 1C, the failure to perform the duty endangers the life of the person to whom the duty is owed, or causes or is likely to cause the health of that person to be injured permanently. Uncle John has been injured permanently, people. He lost 35 plus years of his memory in order to accommodate the people that took him and who facilitated that medical kidnapping. Judge asked, well, hasn't he called you? Why hasn't he called? I told the judge, he can't call. The only way he could possibly call is if someone dialed the phone number for him and allowed him to call. Because he can't see people. Not to mention that at one point the lawyer tried to call him, but the people that had him refused to let him talk to the lawyer or return the phone call to the lawyer. Because John, 1, didn't even get the message that the lawyer was trying to reach him at the request of John on February 19th of 2015 to seek a lawyer who we already had in mind. Okay? And then there is criminal negligence, causing bodily harm by criminal negligence. You would think that Fraser Health would want to ensure that their employees, out of thousands, were acting appropriately to their mandates in terms of not participating in criminal activity, when it only takes 3 individuals to make a criminal organization. So it would be very unreasonable to assume that out of thousands of employees, everybody is an angel and nobody is conspiring to perpetrate white-collar criminal activity for the benefit of themselves and their partners. Everyone who by criminal negligence causes bodily harm to another person is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. Okay, not only did Fraser Health employees injure John through him being injured, was sick for months after he was discharged from Fraser Health, even though at one point on February 17th, 3 or 4 days before he was discharged, they were fighting to keep him by any means necessary, which again is documented through video, right? And have it their way with him, not what he wanted, even though he stated very clearly, he asked that social worker in particular, what did I do wrong? I did not commit no crimes. I want to go home. Home as in with his immediate family. And he stated that on more than one occasion with the last meeting that we had with him as a family. Fighting to try and get him home where he could come home without having them follow him and try and take him out of the home, because these individuals do that kind of stuff when they want the person's money. Because I have heard stories where people have lost their loved ones, brought them home, and then these social workers with the cops show up and take the elderly out of the home, just like they do with children, if they want that money bad enough. And of course, they're not going to come after someone like Sierra or any other homeless person because there's no assets. Right? Again, it's more profitable to keep them out on the streets and keeping that black market underground economy going than it is to give them proper health care and housing and support systems, right? So that we have a healthier society in general. Because that's not the mandate of the healthcare system. The healthcare system does not care about society's general overall health. They care about their bottom dollar line. Bodily harm and acts and omissions causing danger to persons. I guess I should be reading the sections. 247 period 1. Traps likely to cause bodily harm. Everyone is guilty of an indictable offense that is liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 5 years, who, with intent to cause death or bodily harm to a person, whether ascertained or not. 2. Bodily harm. Everyone who commits an offense under subsection 1 and thereby causes bodily harm to any other person, including Uncle John's immediate family, from that first week of with that social worker saying, sign here or it's a war, is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. Offenses related place. Everyone who commits an offense under subsection 1 in a place kept or used for the purpose of committing another indictable offense is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to a term of imprisonment exceeding 10 years. Through the facility of Fraser Health, bank fraud was committed, and so was mail fraud. If John would not have been at the Surrey Memorial Hospital or at the Yale Road Center, under illegal detainment through the facilitation of opiates and a whole bunch of, well, he's confused and he's not confused and he's confused and he's not confused and no, we're not releasing him and he needs this and tomorrow he's confused, right? Do you understand what I'm saying here, people? There was more than one crime being perpetrated within that environment that was meant to help him versus prey upon him and his immediate family. Offense-related place, bodily harm. Uncle John, okay, so everyone who commits an offense under subsection 1 in a place kept or used for the purpose of committing another indictable offense and thereby causes, did I read this? Causes bodily harm to a person is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 14 years. Okay, we're dealing with some serious stuff here, people. Okay? And then there's kidnapping, trafficking, against offenses against rights of property. Again, mail fraud, bank fraud. If John would have not been there, his banking information would not have been illegally accessed for the purpose of to commit fraud. Right? As he was being held against his will. As he was being held against his will. Criminal breach of trust. False pretense. And then we go into the Adult Guardian Act. Right? We go into the Health Care Consent and Care Facility Admission Act, the Patient's Bill of Rights, the Hospital Act, the Medicare Protection Act, right? Again, they just wanted his money because he could afford to pay for those pay-as-you-go services. The Continuing Care Act, the Continuing Care Fees Regulation, right? Who has power of attorney? Sign here now. Don't worry about what John is thinking. Don't worry about what John is feeling. Don't worry if John is okay. Don't worry don't worry about what it is that he actually has other than he's confused and it's our right to take over his life as a team. It had nothing to do with a doctor because John's ammonia hadn't even been cleared up yet. In the initial first week of him entering the facility, right? The mail fraud started, I think it was February 4th, after he was transferred out of the Surrey Memorial Hospital and they needed more time to transfer it, right? So that they could locate his banking information. So they started transferring his mail illegally without his knowledge or my knowledge as they blew off the fact that I had power of attorney and that John had told them on repeated occasions to talk to me and to give me his medical information in regards to what was going on and to make arrangements for him to come home. And because we had been bamboozled with Joan going in and out as his wife, and when she was going in and out of the hospital every 2-3 weeks, as she'd come home for a couple of weeks or whatever, a month or what, and then go back to the hospital, in and out of the hospital 25 times later, she got to come home 25 times. Every time she came home with more equipment, feeding tubes, oxygen tanks. It got to the point where they were gonna send her home with this humongous machine to make the oxygen in the tanks so they didn't have to bring the tanks. So why wouldn't John be thinking that he could come home at least once, people? But no, instead, people were redirecting his mail through Fraser Health Authority facility. It started there, people. Fraser Health Authority is responsible to manage the employees to prevent that activity from happening. How do I tell this to an appeal judge? That we already know that before I even get to these sessions, I get number 13. That judge on the 7th of December told me I had 5 more minutes left to talk. He didn't tell that to the Fraser Health Authority lawyer, but he made sure he told that to me. And not only did he make sure that he told that to me, but he also reminded me that my family is depressed. Depressed so much that it brought my youngest daughter, who's only 19, to sudden tears. Because it's more than depression, people. But the judge had to stoke it, right? So that I would get emotional, and then that would give him the reason to say, well, I don't want to hear anymore because you only got 5 minutes and the case has already been predetermined. I'm just making it look like I'm being fair, basically. Right? Basically, people. Because Fraser Health does not want to take any responsibility for their employees. So if they're not going to take any responsibility for their employees, then they condone this kind of behavior. Because the more they try and convult, tortuously wind up and twist the truth of what happened to this family as a whole, only because Uncle John had money to steal and to profiteer from, okay, they're convolting it with he walked out as a 30-year-old man on his own accord because he was competent, but then on the other hand, it was the doctor that took over his life as a child and made that decision for him to walk out. And because he didn't call you, therefore the doctor must have made the right decision. Even though we know that John couldn't call unless somebody dialed the number for him. In addition to, we're not dealing with a child. That is a totally different act, people. That is the Family Relations Act, which I have over there in a different cupboard, and I'm going to have to pull that out now and read that. Because if they were going to do, which they did do, what they did to Uncle John, it should have been done through the Mental Health Act, which requires 2 signatures from 2 designated doctors in a specific facilities that work around committing people under the Mental Health Act where they lose their basic human rights. And that's what happened to John. They can't have it both ways and then sit up there and say, well, under this little tobacco court case, she cannot succeed because this particular court case says so. If that person couldn't succeed under that court case, which has probably nothing to do with our court case, but it's so mosh-posh together with convoluted, twisted, torturous freaking suppositions. They're not interested in protecting the public from criminal activity. Because if Fraser Health Authority, as the boss, was interested in correcting their rogue employees' behavior when it comes down to criminal activity, whether it's bank fraud, right, mail fraud, let's just pick one randomly. Summary convictions, I don't know what that means, but it applies to something in here. Breaking and entering. They broke into Uncle John's bank account illegally. Robbery. They robbed his money. And to make sure that they keep it, they made it so that he lost his mind. And before he lost his mind, he got injured somewhere. Where did he get injured? Was he injured at the Victoria General Hospital? Was he sick for months and months at the Victoria General Hospital? Did he lose all his memory in the Victoria General Hospital? Or did that occur up in Shawnigan Lake, isolated all by himself with the three fucking stooges? His sister, who he had absolutely no relationship with for years and years and years and years and years and years. Now you're getting into the Adult Guardian Act and all these other acts where these health professionals are supposed to be aware of these creeps that start crawling out of the fucking woodwork when there's money to be found, so that the vulnerable don't get exploited. You don't know how Uncle John. Let me tell you something before I'm going to end on this, because I got to work on this, people. You know, for that first year, I had, like I say, I still, and I believe this, I still have enduring power of attorney over Uncle John's banking affairs and his affairs in general. Okay? And because of that, even though they locked me out, CIBC Bank locked me out of John's account, they couldn't completely lock me out because I had a banking card that provided me with access to the transactions that were going in and out of his account for a period of a year, until the bank actually kicked out the card on purpose through one particular teller that was in cahoots with this situation, so that I couldn't access any more information. Because once I realized that $1,700 was coming out at one pop in the beginning of January or February of 2016, 1 year after they took him, basically from February of 2015 to February of 2016, all of a sudden $1,700 was going in and whatever was being taken out, deposited, and then taken out again, and then taken out again, which tells you that they successfully put him in an old folks home because he had nobody. He was left down to nobody. They reduced him down to having nobody in his life. That's when he said he would go. He would go to convalescent care if he had nobody. But prior to that, I was getting, a year statements showing the transactions that were going in and out of his account. And you know what they were doing? They were going to the workman's warehouse, buying a bunch of fucking clothes, or whatever they were buying at the workman's warehouse. What do you buy at the workman's warehouse? Clothes. They drive it back up to the little shack up by the river or the lake or whatever it was. Throw it at John. Here, try that on, John. Oh, it doesn't fit. Okay, give it back to us. And then they drive it back to the work warehouse. And they would want their money back. They would return it. They did that a few times to make it look like they were providing him with the necessities of life. Right? As he got injured, as he remained sick for months, isolated up in the fucking boonies, as he lost all his memory, so that he didn't talk about his loved ones that he wanted to be with, that Fraser Health Authority wants to protect the fucking employees that prevented that from happening. As they they twist it in a torturous way for their benefit, right? As they pre-stage the court, whatever it is, before I even walked through the fucking door, judge said, you got 5 more minutes. Hurry up and say what you gotta say, because you've only got 5 more minutes. 5 minutes. And I only spoke for 10. And the thing was booked for 90 minutes. I'm telling you, I was prosecuted. I was found guilty before I even showed up at the courthouse. And then I was punished for something that Fraser Health is incapable of managing.